Welcome to Broadcasting Buffalo. I'm your host, Brian Meyer. Tonight we're taking a look at the real estate and home construction industries and how they've been affected by the pandemic. Real estate, of course, has been booming over the past few years, and Nia Peoples has more.
Despite the pandemic, real estate all over Western New York has had record numbers.
So it has been pretty competitive throughout the last several years. We're seeing an uptick in buyers.
We spoke to Angela Stewart, a licensed real estate agent for 6 years, who says the market has become very competitive and is now a seller's playing field.
Well, people say that it is a seller's market because they feel that the inventory is constricted. So that means that there are more buyers than there are sellers.
Many home buyers are finding themselves in bidding wars.
So yes, it's common to be in a situation with multiple offers, but with the right strategy and with getting creative, buyers and sellers can both benefit.
Dr. Michael Nyman moved to Elmwood Village over 20 years ago. He says prices have skyrocketed in his neighborhood and it is negatively affecting the community.
You know, there's some people who might have bought the houses for like $35,000 and now they're worth $450,000, but they can't afford to pay the taxes on them because the tax is based on that. Taxes are based on what that assessed value is.
He is disappointed to see people are being priced out of their neighborhoods.
You know, now we're losing those very things that made Buffalo attractive. So you're seeing a lot of high housing costs. On my street, the price of housing has gone up since I've lived there, which would be 22 years. The price of houses has gone up 500%.
Stewart has some tips and tricks for people who are still looking to buy a home.
Additionally, houses have been selling for over asking price, but price is arbitrary. There's only been about 102% increase, so 2% over asking price. So the key is to find an agent, if you're buying, who you fit with and who has a good record of list price versus sale price. So then a buyer can even benefit in a market like it is today.
Interest rates are beginning to rise, and economists are interested to see if the strong market will continue. For Broadcasting Buffalo, I'm Nia Peoples.
Thank you, Nia. Well, welcome back. I'm joined by three guests who work in the real estate industry. Lori Adams, Barbara Baker, and Bucky Gleason are all here to talk about buying and selling homes. We'll be right back with more.
No matter who you are or where you're from, you are welcome here.
Tú eres bienvenido.
مرحبا أهلا وسهلا.
You are welcome here.
You are welcome here.
Hello, Buffalo. I'm Ed Asner. You may remember me as television's no-nonsense news director Lou Grant. And if you think about it, journalists provide us with our first draft of history. Right here in Buffalo, more than 50 years of TV news coverage is being brought back to life. Local stations are working with the Buffalo Broadcasters Association to bring back the stories that helped define the Niagara frontier.
The Pheasant Lane neighborhood, where drifts reach to the rooftops.
It's called the Archive Project, and I support it with all my heart. So should you.
Welcome back to Broadcasting Buffalo. I'm Brian Meyer. I'm joined tonight by three local licensed real estate professionals, Lori Adams, Barbara Baker, and Bucky Gleason. I'd like to start by asking all of you the same question. We know that COVID has changed every facet of our lives, and I know it's changed the real estate industry. It's had some profound effects. Lori, what are some of those effects you've seen?
Oh my gosh, I'm blank. So the effects that it's really had on the market is we've seen a decrease in our inventory. We have so few houses that are on the market now compared to a normal time, and that is what has driven the price as well as the speed that houses are going on and off the market.
Yeah, and that's called in normal terms sort of a seller's market, right, Bucky?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think when you look at it right now, the impact of the pandemic, I think, is pretty profound. You had a lot of people that were having more money injected into their bank accounts by the government. They had fewer opportunities to spend that money, and that gave and the interest rates came down. So that combination, you know, when you look at it, you had more people that wouldn't normally be involved in a market all of a sudden finding out, I can get a little bit more for my house, so I'm going to sell my house and I'm going to jump into a house that might be larger, more expensive, in a nicer area than they were living in. And I also think that, you know, people wanted to be closer to families.
Mm-hmm.
If you were parents and you were living in Florida, you wanted to come back and be closer to your family during the pandemic, and vice versa. If you were kids coming, you might have been coming back home.
Barbara, you've been doing this for many years here in Western New York. Tell us about your personal experiences pre-COVID, post-COVID.
Well, post-COVID or pandemic itself is really what changed everything. It was this urgency to buy, and it was the way deals were being struck. People were bidding and outbidding each other, multiple offers on almost everything. And there were people that were offering so much higher that, of course, it increased the value and the assessed values of all these homes. And they were doing things without inspections, which is not very wise.
Sort of a cash, you know, I'll pay cash.
Cash was king.
Yeah, wow.
In spite of the low interest rates. I mean, things like that happened. Impulsive decisions were made. People were buying virtually, not seeing the homes themselves.
Yeah, and that does
it
create
made it
some
difficult.
risks. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Lori, are there any specific geographic pockets that have been particularly hot in recent, the last year or two, do you think?
Actually, it's all over Western New York. I know when I first started in this industry, we had many investors looking within the city of Buffalo limits, and now it's very hard to find a house within the city of Buffalo limits. You know, that's something that certainly has changed, not just by the pandemic, but just the resurgence of our city.
Yeah, there's been a lot of trends. We had a show that looked at, for example, the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus and what has been happening in Allentown and ancillary Fruit Belt and ancillary areas. Bucky, what about you? Are you seeing any geographic trends as it relates to what's hot, what's not?
No, I agree with what Lori said. I think that it's pretty balanced throughout the Niagara Frontier region. You can expect in most cases that if you are representing a buyer that there's going to be more than one offer, usually 3 or 4, sometimes 5 or 6, at times 10, 12. So it really doesn't matter where you are. I think the biggest change is that you're seeing prices jump in areas that you didn't expect. Mm-hmm. You're seeing places like Lackawanna and Cheektowaga where a lot of the home prices were held in check, going through the very same things that are happening in East Aurora, in Amherst, in Orchard Park. So that's been interesting to me. And it really comes down to simple supply and demand. It's economics 101.
So it sounds like it's sort of an equal opportunity challenge, if you will, to find real estate.
It has definitely been a challenge for many families, especially young families trying to get their first home. That has probably been the most difficult because they're learning real estate, they're learning what you have to do, and in every instance, there's dozens of other young families or people scaling down, so the big house going to the small house. So we had all ages having difficulty getting homes.
You know, you raised the whole issue of the first-time home buyer. You know, I mean, I remember when I bought my house in the early 80s, I thought I was ripped off paying $42 grand. It was a pretty good deal looking back at it. But I wonder how, you know, folks who entered the job market a year ago or even 2 years ago can possibly foot some of these costs, Lori, these, for homes?
Well, I think one of the problems that we have, or we've had, is normally if you're approved for, say, 150,000, that's what your search criteria is. Now, if you're approved for 150,000, you don't look at $150,000 houses because everything's going over the asking price. So you have to be looking in the $120,000 range. But also in our area, our average home price has climbed above $200,000, which really hurts the first-time home buyer. Any kind of concessions or anything that helps them with their down payment, they're just not able to get in a competitive market like this.
So how do you handle that then, Bucky? First-time home buyer, maybe it's a couple or a single person. I want to buy my first house. Where do you go? What do you do?
You have to make sure that they're fully prepared. I think that, a lot of times you're going to hear people say, like, preparation is half of the rule. It's 90%. Make sure that they have their pre-qualification, make sure that they understand the market as it is, that when you're looking at a house, before you even walk in the door, that if it's 200, that they should be prepared to spend 220, 225, 230, 240 and up. So I think that's a big part of it. When you're prepared, there's no surprises, Brian. You know how that works. And at least then, when you're making a purchase, you're making an educated decision and something that you're comfortable with, rather than being stressed out and worried about whether you overspent.
What about sellers? If it's a seller's market, Barbara, can the seller sort of cut some corners? Maybe not do as much staging. In other words, making things look nice inside and out.
That's very interesting comment, because you see two ends of the rainbow here. People who say as is, and other people who've gone out and bought granite counters and stainless appliances because they know, they've seen HGTV, they've read the papers, they go online, they know what's selling, bathrooms, kitchens. So the extreme will go out and do the very best because they know that they will get fruits for their labor.
Yeah, it's kind of a return on investment, if you will. Yeah,
absolutely. So you see both ends.
Bucky's thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's, I think a lot of times it depends on how much do you have available money-wise in order to make some improvements at the time that you're willing to sell. Some people are just selling to sell. They're trying to hit the market while it's hot. They're trying to make a buck, so making very little or few or no changes or upgrades to their home, and they're tossing it on the market and they're going to see what happens. And a lot of them, unfortunately, they're pleasantly surprised because you have so many buyers out there willing to offer over asking price. But I agree with what Barbara's saying, that I think if you're doing it smart, if you're doing it the right way, maybe the old-fashioned way, you're still gonna gain more.
Quick thoughts on that, Lori?
One statistic that I use with my clients quite often is every Monday I look up to see how many single-family homes we have for sale in Erie County. As of last Monday, because I didn't do it yet today, there were 370 single-family homes for sale in Erie County, which that also means that there's 3,700 realtors is what we have in Erie County that are competing for those 370 houses. And when you put it that way, a client understands that we have to be quick, we have to be competitive, we have to know what our options are. Can we pre-inspect something? I agree, giving up a home inspection is not a good idea, but there are ways to pre-inspect before we do that, before we place an offer, so you can go in with confidence.
Well, we have so much more to talk about, including home construction, which is another booming industry since the pandemic. When we return, we'll talk more about that and other issues involving real estate. We'll be back in just a moment.
Believe, inspire, achieve. These three simple words capture the progression of each student's journey at the college.
Believe. Education works best when powered by confidence and a positive attitude. When students believe in themselves, great things can happen.
Inspire. Active learning among a peer group of engaged and community-minded leaders inspires great thinking and doing.
Achieve. On a very practical level, each student finds the support and resources at Buffalo State to achieve their goals. Achievements continue on through our more than 100,000 alumni throughout the world.
No matter the occasion, Premier Gourmet is here for you. Featuring Buffalo's best craft beer selection, grocery store items, coffee, and gifts. Find locally made Buffalo products and everything you need for your home bar. Visit premiergourmet.com.
Experience Buffalo and Erie County's unique stories with the new Buffalo History Museum podcast. Connect with Western New York's history as you listen to detailed narratives about heritage, architecture, business, innovation, and significant events and people throughout time. The podcast takes inspiration from the museum's collection and beyond, from experts on staff and featured guests. From the 1918 influenza to F. Scott Fitzgerald, experience the stories that make up our region. The Buffalo History Museum podcast. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Broadcasting Buffalo. I'm Brian Meyer. Well, we've been talking about the booming real estate industry, and of course, a related area seeing increased demand is the home construction industry. Jenna Fields has more on that.
People who are doing constructions at their homes are noticing many delays impacting their projects.
The construction industry is experiencing many setbacks as a result of the COVID pandemic, including cancellations and extensive wait times for furniture and appliances. Alex Miller works in home building industry. He says demand is extremely high.
People want to be moving into new homes, so the desire for new built construction is the highest I've ever seen it in this industry.
Between new builds and home renovation projects, Rick DeSimone from Kodak Builders has seen firsthand how construction has surged within the past few years.
I think people were staying home. They weren't traveling. They were sitting around their houses seeing things they wanted done. They had extra money because they weren't using it for vacations.
With high demand for renovations and the worker shortages, certain components are taking longer than normal to be delivered, causing vast shortages and increased prices. Wait time for some materials is estimated between 6 months to a year.
I've heard of shortages within plastics, within oils. There's a lot of different components that go into, whether it's PVC pipe, vinyl siding, roofing material, all these products that go into a home.
It's random things, especially appliances are tough, furniture's tough.
Despite the delays, Alex Miller says there are still benefits to building right now.
I've watched one house I did kind of an analysis on when we sold it compared to when we actually closed on the house. And the price of the home went up about 17% over the course of just the construction process. So all that turns into actual equity for the homeowner that they're buying it. We don't go back and charge them more because the house is worth more.
For more information on construction delays, visit our website at broadcastingbuffalo.com. In Silver Creek, I'm Jenna Fields.
Thank you, Jenna. I'm here with three local real estate professionals, Lori Adams, Barbara Baker, Bucky Gleason. We've been talking a little bit about home construction. We saw Jenna's report. Tell us a little bit about what's driving these ever-increasing prices in home construction. Barbara.
The materials themselves, in terms of people wanting brand new instead of having to redo, and when they see what's available, they're very excited. The problem is delivery and pricing changes during construction, and that has really caused a lot of discomfort and anger and frustration with both the builder and the buyers.
We've heard about, this whole, supply side challenge, that the supply chain and so forth. Bucky, what are you seeing and hearing as it relates to that in home construction?
I think Barbara touched on it a little bit, and I'll just expand a little bit on what she said. And, one of the things is you're seeing soaring prices at the end of the day, right? And you're also seeing delays in when these jobs are being completed. So, and this is nothing against the builders. It is impossible for them to try to figure out how much it's going to be exactly, and exactly when it's going to be completed. So I think a lot of times what I'm hearing from builders and from people who are building is that it's going to be more expensive than what you thought when it started, and it's going to take longer than what you expected when you were told it would be completed. So, you could be 12, 14, 16 months out from the beginning of a process that used to take 4 to 6 months.
Yeah, the timing aspect is so critical when you're building. Lori, do you have advice for people who are thinking, I want to build, I want to start and I want to have a new home built?
I'm actually working with a client right now that's in the process of building. She met with the builder this weekend, and he told her that if she wanted windows in her garage door, it was going to add 2 months onto the building time. So she elected to go with garage doors without windows. So people are making sacrifices that there's so many choices when you build a house that they're changing what they thought they wanted to be able to get it within a time frame that's reasonable.
Wow, that's amazing. And of course, none of us have crystal balls. None of us know when the supply chain issues are going to change. But what about those folks who are saying, maybe, especially the younger folks who may be renting, maybe this is not the time to buy. Maybe I need to keep plunking down monthly rents. What do you think about that? Is that a good strategy for people?
I never think that's a great strategy because it's taking the money and throwing it into the sewer. Maybe they should start to think they won't be their forever home, but look for something a little bit smaller. This is the first-time buyer who wants to build, but they can put in a new kitchen a whole lot less than trying to buy a home to have it built, because prices can't be set, and that's a real issue.
Yeah, what about that, Bucky? I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that are saying, maybe this isn't the time.
Yeah, 2 of those people happen to be my children. I have 4 kids, and my 2 older ones, one is 25 and the other one's 23. So here they are, young professionals in the Buffalo area trying to figure out, what the next move is. And the problem that you're running into, and it's going to increase, is that rents are going to continue to go up. As you see investors who are buying investment property, they're paying a good buck for that property, more than they were 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. They have to justify that expense. How do you do that? You raise the rent. And when you get to a point where you raise the rent to a point where you can just have a mortgage, you have to start looking into buying that starter home is what makes the most sense.
We have to look at the fact that rents also are, factored into, this boom, if you will, right, Lori?
Right. I have been telling my first-time home buyer clients, especially if they were looking for some help with their closing costs and things, that maybe it isn't the right time to buy, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be out looking, and that they should be strengthening their position. They should be saving more money so that they can be more ready to buy when something comes up, to be able to understand the market and know that we have to move quickly.
So many issues we've talked about and more to come. Some final thoughts in just a moment.
This is a college that inspires. Here you'll be engaged, strive for excellence, and prepare for a career. Visit our amazing Elmwood Village campus and apply today. You'll achieve your edge here. This place is Buffalo State College.
No matter the occasion, the Premier Group is here for you. Take advantage of our easy online ordering and curbside pickup, or shop the finest selection of unique wines, spirits, and gifts at any of our 3 independently owned Western New York locations.
Your life has taught you a lot. Now your experience can help change a child's life. Read to Succeed and AARP Experience Corps are looking for local volunteers, 50 and older, to help children in Buffalo City schools learn to read. You'll receive training to help you be a great tutor. You have what it takes to change a young person's life. The experience may even change your own. Volunteer by going to readtosucceedbuffalo.org.
Welcome back to Broadcasting Buffalo. I'm Brian Meyer, here with Lori Adams, Barbara Baker, and Bucky Gleason. We all know that interest rates, as we sit here chatting in late March, have started to tick upward. None of us know how fast, how many rate hikes the Fed will impose, et cetera. Well, how do you think, looking at what you're seeing, how do you think that's going to affect things?
At this point, I don't think it has had a big impact. It could if it continues. But rents have also, as we touched on before, have gone up sky high. And frankly, with what rent prices are, it gives you an awful big mortgage. in terms of mortgage, even at 4%. So I don't think at this point it's going to stop people. And I think the great need for wanting to come home, we've had young families coming back to Buffalo. Buffalo is booming, and that's a wonderful sign. And I think that's more important, that we have a great city.
So when you look at the mortgage rate picture, what do you think, Bucky?
I think that people should be happy if they can get an interest rate for under 5%. It wasn't that long ago, right, where we were looking at 6 and 7%. It goes under 5, and they were jumping for joy, and then it came under 4. Then it was getting under 3. I want people to have a longer memory so they remember what it was like when the interest rates were, in fact, 4.5 or 5, which is a fantastic interest rate compared to what we knew. My first interest rate, 8%, thought I was robbing the bank. That's what people need to remember, that 4.5%, 5% is still fantastic. It's still a great time to buy.
My first interest rate in the 80s was 18%. Yes, Lori, what do you think? Parting thoughts on this?
It just depends to me on how high the interest rates go, because people can only afford X amount of dollars a month. So they're either going to pay it in the home price or they're going to pay it in the interest. So if the interest rates stay the way they are, when we bought our first house in 1988, interest rates were 11%. I got a Sunny Mae mortgage at 8.4 and thought I was on top of the world. So when people complain about 3.5 to 3.75 or 4, it's still less than half of what I paid in the 1980s.
Yeah, everything is relative. We do have to remind ourselves of that. Well, we've hit on so many things. We've talked about the seller's market, about supply chain demand, about home construction, so much more to talk about. We could spend another hour and still not exhaust the topics. We really appreciate you joining us, and we thank you again for joining us for this episode of Broadcasting Buffalo. Now, if you'd like to learn more about the real estate industry, visit our website. That's broadcastingbuffalo.com. Thank you again for joining us tonight, and have a great evening.